Hi, I'm Josh Cantwell, Chief Operating Officer here at Grand Mental Health and a proud Rogers County resident. I'm pleased to welcome you today for this important conversation. I'd like to extend a very special thanks to Dr. Racer and our friends here at my alma mater, Rogers State University. Thank you. All right. It did not say pause for applause right there. Just kidding. RSU is co-hosting today's panel discussion with us and is graciously covering the cost of the venue and the food service today. So, as a resident and advocate of this vital community, I know all too well the tragedy of this summer's tornado and the resilience of our neighbors that were impacted. I applaud the tireless and courageous efforts of our first responders, city and county leadership, and our amazing disaster relief teams. We are Claremore strong, and it showed repeatedly in our immediate and ongoing response to this crisis. Today, we're here not so much to relive the events, that storm, and our response this far, but to create a forum for open dialogue about how we as a community can grow and heal for the long term after the storm. It's been a traumatic summer, and our trauma doesn't necessarily end when the streets are clean or the electricity's back on. In fact, to many, it's just the beginning. At Grand, we often work with everyday people experiencing severe anxiety and depression, restlessness, and fear following a tragedy or a disaster. And many tend to discount those feelings, or they even express shame, saying things like, well, it's over now, or many people had it way worse than I did. At Grand, we see the need to provide a safe and reliable space to unpack our trauma and to find better ways to cope and heal. So I'm so grateful to our team for providing intentional opportunities like this for discussion and collaboration and connectivity. So this conversation today represents a united step towards healing and wholeness through open dialogue, heightened awareness, vulnerability, and the strength of our amazing village. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Racer. He's going to do the opening remarks, and he's going to turn it over to our moderator, Jessica Lobetz, to get us started. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Racer to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning, and I'll be very brief this morning, but I just want to welcome you to our campus on behalf of our faculty, staff, and a few students that we have on campus right now. Welcome to the Hill. We are very proud of the relationship that we have with Claremore, with Rogers County. There's great partnerships that we work together every day. I see people that I call up on the phone for help on a regular basis. So anytime we have the opportunity to just give a little bit back, we certainly want to do that, and today was that opportunity. I will tell you, the night of that tornado, most people don't know, we had about 400 guests on campus as we were hosting Oklahoma Boys State. So I had about 350 high school, junior, seniors, and then about 80 or 100 counselors. They were all out on Soldier Field when the sirens went off, and within 6 minutes, they had everybody in the basement of Chapman Cafeteria, where they kept them most of the night. And then we figured out how to get through the day without electric for the next day. But other than that, we were unscathed. We were blessed to, I think we had 3 or 4 trees damaged, and that was about it. So we're happy to have you here today. If we can be of assistance in the future, please reach out to my office. Sodexo, special thank you to them for putting on the box lunch today. They do a great job. We appreciate them. And again, welcome to campus. If there's anything I can do to assist you, please reach out to me. Thank you. Jessica?
Let's give Dr. Racer a hand for hosting us today. Thank you, kind people. I'm Jessica Lobetz again, Vice President for Schnocky Turnbow Frank, a leadership development and public relations firm. And it is my honor to serve as your moderator today. Thank you for being here in person, and thank you for being here if you were on Zoom. I also want to welcome the virtual audience to the conversation. We hope that you will be informed and encouraged after our discussion today. And this is truly what we're doing. We're just having a conversation. We really want to hear from the hearts and minds of those on the panel. And I want to go ahead and start by introducing them. First, I'd like to introduce Diana Dickinson. She is a seasoned professional with a diverse background in media and communications. That's my background, too. Having spent years in the fast-paced world of journalism, Diana transitioned her interest to a new role as the Public Information Officer for Rogers County. In this capacity, she serves as a vital link between the county government, its residents, ensuring that important announcements, updates, and public initiatives are communicated effectively and transparently. Her ability to use strong communication skills and strategic thinking during the May 2024 tornado proved to be a valuable in gathering and disseminating information between leaders and those impacted by the tornadoes. Please join me in welcoming Diana. Up next, we have Steve Massey, the Emergency Management Deputy Director for Rogers County. He started his career in law enforcement in 1995, 1 month after the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building bombing, and fell in love with serving his community. During his tenure in law enforcement, he worked in patrol, served as a K-9 officer. He's been a SWAT officer, a narcotics officer, a jail administrator, a range master, and a medical legal death investigator. I just want to talk to you after this and learn all of the stories. He routinely instructs within the community for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Agency, teaching students how to use Narcan to save lives. He carries many certifications in emergency management, including a communications certification to deploy with FEMA and assistance during natural disasters. Please join me in welcoming Steve Massey. All right. In 2021, Meggie Froman-Knight was appointed Executive Director of the Claremore Industrial and Economic Development Authority after serving as Talent Development Manager since 2016 and Associate Director since 2020. She collaborated with community and business partners to develop a comprehensive workforce and economic development strategy for Claremore and Rogers County, earning recognition from the International Economic Development Council. Her efforts include launching talent development programs and supporting business expansion and retention through public-private partnership. Before joining Claremore Economic Development, she spent a decade in the nonprofit and higher ed sectors and served as Executive Director of Claremore Collective Young Professionals. She's a sixth-generation Claremore resident, holds a BA in Corporate Communication from Northeastern State, and an MBA from Rogers State University. Please join me in welcoming Meggie to the panel. And then after nearly 2 decades in public service and economic development, John Feary was named Claremore City Manager in December of 2020. He is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city and oversees 16 departments, ranging from tourism to public safety. Prior to joining full-time as city manager, John served 5 months in an interim capacity. He brings unique experience in economic development through his previous roles as Executive Director of the Claremore Industrial and Economic Development Authority, where he was responsible for attracting, retaining, and expanding quality jobs and retail opportunities in Claremore. He has a long tenure of working with local governments and various city and county levels and understands the importance of developing reliable infrastructure and sound economic initiatives to build communities. Please join me in welcoming John. And then representing Grand Mental Health is Matthew Spencer. He began his career in the mental health field in 2008 doing research at Oklahoma State University. He has had substantial practicum experience with the aging population in the hospital setting and has worked in an inpatient setting with children. In 2012, he began working in the community mental health field and fell in love with providing services to the community. Matthew began his career with Grand as a behavioral health professional. Since then, he has held many positions and titles within Grand, including mental health court therapist, adult services administrator over the Washington County Clinic, clinical director in Rogers County, regional clinical officer, and more. So he comes well qualified and will be able to address some of the deep-seated mental health challenges that we've been facing recently. Please join me in welcoming Matt and the entire panel. So let's get started, panel. First question is for you, City Manager John. Describe really in good detail what occurred here on May 25th, 2024, and the level of damage the tornado had on this community.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and thanks everybody for having us here today. So on May 25th, as you know, not quite the middle of the night, but very late in the evening, an EF3 tornado struck Rogers County in the city of Claremore. For those of you that don't know, an EF3 tornado is classified as 145 to 155 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts up to 160 miles per hour. As you can imagine, hitting a densely populated area such as Claremore in the original part of town and downtown and moving east and definitely adversely affecting our friends in Rogers County and Dan DeLozier's district in Carefree Valley, it was an event that you always like to think that you're prepared for, but you hope to God that never happens. Well, it happened. And so knowing that we were up against pitch black, knowing that we were up against completely de-energized all four of our substations, you instantly kind of go into, okay, initial, let's get to the proper people to the proper place, and then let's start the assessment. And so we were very fortunate that the rodeo had ended about a half an hour before, or we'd had 3,500 people outside in the direct path. Myself and a stock contractor had about 100 people in the basement of our water treatment plant. So we were fortunate to get those folks down there. But it was certainly, as a public servant, you prep for these things and you try to have a plan for them. But until they happen, you don't really know what's going to hit. And the best and the worst come out of people in these things. And I'm very pleased to say that the best of this community and the best of this county came out of this event. But it was catastrophic in the sense that no electricity, roads were cut off. We were all cut off. It took 30 minutes for me to get from the rodeo grounds to our EOC, which is at Sioux and Blue Star. So 800 feet. Just trying to drive around. And Frank, I'm sorry, those ruts in the ditch in front of your house are for me going around the power line in the middle of the night to get there. So we're very fortunate, though, that we were able to mobilize equipment, contractors, and our goal was by sunup, we wanted to make sure that we could get to every structure and start search and rescue. And when that sun came up between 5 and 6 a.m., I just knew in my heart that we were going to have fatalities. And only by the grace of God and I think planning and what notification we did have from our good friends Steve and Travis Meyer, of course, we were able to get there. And I want to talk about one thing and then I'll be quiet. On the west side of town, as you may or may not know, our storm siren was damaged. There were parts missing, and so we had ordered those for replacement. Ironically, I think they actually came in the Friday before the tornado. But I want you all to know there were 6 police officers that were assigned to and volunteered to drive around on the west side of this community. That was our backup plan, long before we ever knew a tornado was coming. And they were in danger, and they notified those neighborhoods. And if you haven't seen the video that Chief Cox has posted, it was horrifying, and it was life-threatening, and these guys did it. That's the type of public servants you have. And I think this is a fitting place to remind everybody, those are the types of memories and experiences that most of our first responders in police, fire, and EMS live with all the time and carry around with them. So I think it's fitting that we're in a place to talk about behavioral health and mental health. But it was a tumultuous evening, and thank God the next morning, Dan DeLozier, Steve Massey, and myself, Scotty Stokes took a vacation, by the way, and Chief Sean Cox and Chief Sean Douglas and Chief Steve Cox, as well as Sheriff Walton and his crew, we all came together and made the conscious decision, whatever it takes, no egos, we're going to get these communities whole again. And that's how we started this process.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit more about the damage, and also maybe the damage that was surrounding Claremore too, because I think sometimes we just think about one target area that was impacted, but was there a wider footprint of impact outside of the city as well?
Yeah, obviously substantial damage to homes and structures. Our entire electric infrastructure was affected. We have 28 circuits throughout the community. All 28 circuits were down. About 13 of them were fully decimated or just gone. So we were very fortunate that our water plant and our wastewater treatment plant stayed up. But lots of total loss structures, homes, mobile homes, houses in the original part of town, businesses, and of course out east in Carefree Valley, bigger acreages, but total loss houses, I think 80 or 90 if I recall, Steve and Diana.
Mm-hmm. That's big. And when you describe the blackout, right, that night, and then when light, comes, wow, what a discovery of things you may not have ever been ready for. Diana, how would you describe the aftermath? Describe the scenarios you all have been navigating with victims of the storm.
With this devastation came everyone hitting the ground at the same time in different directions. Commissioner Dan Delosier, he was, I don't even know how much sleep he even got that first month, but he really focused on the people. And if that meant clearing roads, responding to their immediate needs for food, or bringing resources in, Red Cross, and other resources, Mercy Chefs came. We basically met people where they were and where they are, whatever that meant. If it meant a hug, that's what we gave. If it meant an ear, that's what we did. If it meant coming back out to check on them or provide additional resources, that's what it meant. You asked me to share a personal story, and there is an acquaintance. She is in the room. I won't identify her, but we bonded over a jar of peanut butter and potted meat. And it was emotional. I got to go home to my house, and with that, there's survivor's guilt. There's a guilt of, I don't deserve this. I want to be able to open my house to everyone. So there was a repeated effort to go out and visit with a lot of people and visit new people and find out what their needs were. It only took one person to say what their need was, because that basically spoke for everyone. They all had the same need: safety, security, shelter, food, water, connection. They were so isolated. That continues. I still maintain contact with them as far as the mental health component. That was one of the things that we felt could have been there at the beginning, and something we will look at later.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to add to the conversation around scenarios that people have been grappling with after the storm, and maybe a story or two that really encouraged you to keep going? Anyone else?
I would say again, seeing the community really rally together, but you dealt with situations where families wouldn't leave their property. They couldn't live in their structure, but they wouldn't leave their property because what they did have left, they were going to protect. There's some of those. Meggie's got some great stories on some stuff we did with, you get down these and you start realizing, okay, that daycare can't open. Well, that means those parents don't have a place to take their children, and those people can't go to work. I mean, all of these things that happen, and to Diana's point, what you take for credit or what you take for granted is, we were okay. We were without power for 6 days, but we didn't have any damage at our home. But I drive around and stop and just talk to people and let them know what's going on. I mean, there's no internet, there's no power, so while posting videos and communicating is one thing, there's people that don't have any way to charge their phones and do these things. So, but I'm just going to tell you again, as a whole, I can't say enough, the people in the community, whether it was the schools, the hospitals, the college, Sequoia schools, Commissioner Delosier, the people leaned into each other and they supported each other. And I'll tell you, I call it that, it's post-Alfred Murrah bombing. It's September 12th syndrome, where everybody that's how we should be all the time with each other, to be honest with you. It shouldn't take something like that, but it did, and I could see it. And I just saw it with my own eyes, and the folks that leaned into each other and supported their neighbor. People that had nothing were next door helping their neighbors who still had a chance to live in their home clean up while they were in a tent in their front yard. That was awesome to see.
Well, I can tell you, I feel a presence here in Claremore. I'm not from here, I'm not here often, but even coming here today, I was just sharing with Diana how I could feel this community, the strength of community. And that's something that we just shouldn't throw away. It's very powerful. Meggie, let me ask you this question. How do natural disasters and tragedies affect communities in both the long and short term?
Absolutely. So Claremore Economic Development primarily serves our business community, but what makes those businesses are the people that drive them every day, right? The employees that show up. And so in the short term, even our own teams, and I know there was a city employee as well, who lost their home, or our employee, I had an employee that didn't have power for 9 days. Yet that employee was there first thing in the morning serving their community. And so in the short term, our initial was going, okay, insurance is going to be critical. And so how do we make sure our insurance agencies have offices and facilities? And if they don't have power or internet, then they can't do their adjustment claims and things of that sort. And so our partners at Northeast Tech help us stand up a business center. And so you could have access to internet, air conditioning, printers, things of that sort. And so whether you are a remote employee working for a business that's not located in Claremore, or you're a business that was located in Claremore that did not have either a building or internet or whatever that was needed to function, that was set up in less than 30 minutes. And so I think that attests to the need there. And so it also allowed for individuals to file, their claims on damage.ok.gov and individuals and things of that sort. And so that short term was kind of that initial. And then as John indicated, we start looking at childcare. If I don't have a home, or if my business was okay, my place of employment was, if I don't have somewhere for my child to go, given that school was out of session, how do I do that? How do I manage if I don't have internet from home, or I'm trying to work remote? We all know since 2020, if you're trying to manage a child or multiple children while working, sometimes that gets a little complicated. And so our team worked really closely with Homespun as one of the examples, which was pretty impacted. And so bringing in DHS to go, how do we work through this? How do we find a temporary location? What are the requirements? Are there alterations that we can do to get these quickly back up? Because it's not just those 50 to 85 children, it's the up to 100 and 200 parents or guardians or people that are taking care of those children as well, and including their employees. How do we make sure our childcare employees continue to get income? And so a lot of that work, partnering with the city and the county to help work on some of the debris pieces, our team worked on getting some temporary fencing and things up. But, some of those things that you may not think about, we thought about, okay, insurance is number one. We need a place for people to work. But then you start going, as we worked with Claremore and Owasso Chambers, we started going down East Highway 20 up to 5 days after the tornado. Within an hour on Sunday, we had this great website put up of all the resources. Well, if you don't have internet or power, you can't access it, right? And so literally going back to go, okay, we need paper with QR codes, but what if they can't charge their batteries? Make sure it has a URL. And so we hit a little over 600 businesses throughout Rogers County, door by door, dividing up teams. And so it also allowed our partners from the chamber as well as Owasso Chamber to come over and learn how that can then be a resource if and when their community were ever impacted too. So now recovery, right? Yeah. So it's if my buildings, I'm in the historical part of town and insurance does not cover my roof, how do I work through SBA or SBDC and things of that sort? And so that piece is really the focus. And then if and when there are any businesses that are shuttered permanently, how do we relocate those employees to their next employment opportunity?
Wow. Steve, what would you add in terms of short-term, long-term impacts and how you've been supporting people?
So we've been working with FEMA constantly on everything from SBA to the PA to the IA. We're trying to get as many resources brought in to help people on the backside of things through this recovery process. It is a long, drawn-out process. It's not an easy thing to navigate, and that's why we have the the FEMA group now is set up at the health department, so they can get everybody signed up on all these programs. And I was directly impacted myself. My home was in the tornado path. So I actually went and sat through that process as well. You know, I went up there, they walked me through it. It was about an hour and a half process, and I applied, and they go from your initial application to SBA, they make sure you're getting every bit of information they can possibly get to help you. And then the last table that you go to is mitigation. So they try to help you come up and formulate a plan. Well, what are you going to do if this happens next time? So, you know, there definitely is a lot of different discussions at all the tables. So, you know, we try to keep everybody engaged. We keep sending out messages, reminding people. The FEMA group that's at the health department will be here at this point until August the 14th, and then they will be leaving. There's a possibility, depending on how much foot traffic they have, they could leave earlier. So we just encourage everybody, if you had any type of damage, even if you're fully covered in insurance, go up and see them.
So there's a big measure of patience required in all of this, and I can only imagine. I need my stuff tended to now, right? And you want me to go in line? You want me to wait? But that attribute has to be something that a lot of people need a lot of in this case, is some patience. But I appreciate you for sharing that. So Matt, so all of the things, the tactics, you know, the insurance claims and all the stuff that people have to do is one thing. But now we got to talk about, you know, how does this impact, you know, your brain, your emotional responses, your psychology, what you're experiencing? So what are some of the common mental responses or emotional responses to experiencing a natural disaster?
That is a really good question. So so just to kind of start off, like I live in Rogers County. I provided the vast majority of the experience I have in direct client care was with individuals who live in Claremore or the Rogers County area. And as you're experiencing something like this, what you know is that it's not going to feel good, right? And so we just as human beings, we seek things that feel good. We want to experience laughter and joy. Whenever something like this happens, you have experienced a life-threatening event. And so whenever you look at the diagnostic criteria for trauma, one of the factors that that's considered for a traumatic disorder involves a life-threatening event or a natural disaster. And so the individuals that, even those that their home was not directly impacted by the storm, or even individuals that I had run into who, you know, I asked them, you know, how they're doing from the storm, and their response is that, you know, we didn't get it that bad. It was just our backyard and fence that was destroyed, you know? And we hear that, I hear that from the outside looking in. It didn't hit my area as bad. And I think, like that's so resilient, right? Like, this person has experienced this, and that's the mindset and what they have put together in order to get through this. But then they're also now going to be faced with the fact that there's the cleanup involved in this. Diana had said, the guilt that this person is feeling of, like, my neighbor lost their home, my neighbors lost their homes, they have a total loss or partial loss, and all I have is these, you know, so it's very common to kind of downgrade what you're feeling, for sure. But, you know, I think just acknowledging and knowing that this is something, especially whenever it starts, that is not going to feel good. You may feel overwhelmed. You may have you may feel anger, you know, you may be angry about this. A lot of times with life-threatening situations, there may be someone to blame, right? But this is a natural disaster, and so that can be really confusing, and that can be really difficult to deal with and handle in our minds as we're going through, you know, the repair and the restoration of this situation. And so whenever we look at like what this should feel like, right? Every natural disaster and every community is impacted by these things differently. To such a wide array that we look at the number of individuals that have experienced a natural disaster. What percentage is the likelihood that they're going to experience a traumatic disorder as a result? And the answer is 5% to 60%. So it's very, a lot of what goes into it involves the support that we have available, and also the resilience of the area that's been impacted. And I'm very hopeful, knowing this community really well, and knowing the individuals that you guys have for support and that we have for support, the people that are on this panel, right? I'm very hopeful that we'll be on the lower end of this, and if not, we'll be prepared to help out. Okay.
So what should someone do if they're experiencing just anguish, anxiety, just a trauma response to the storm? What would you advise them to do, especially if they're not familiar with kind of the mental health industry and where to go and where to start?
Yeah, so it's very important to not bottle this up. I know that it's very easy to tell yourself, someone had it worse than me, or I'm just not, I'm not feeling good about this, but I'll feel better in a few months. What you're going to want to pay attention to is if these symptoms are getting worse, don't be afraid to reach out for help. If it's not just bouncing ideas off of a friend, don't be afraid to go talk to somebody about it. The members of this panel are very supportive of receiving mental health treatment, and just the individuals in Rogers County in general are just extremely supportive of fighting that stigma that comes along with getting help. Like, we know that there are going to be times where this is necessary, and so walk into a facility, a behavioral health facility, like Grand, and talk to somebody. We can provide screening tools and assessments, and tell you from there what your next steps should be.
Excellent, thank you. So in addition to the healing process, it's not just going to Grand, there's also some healing components that everyone plays. And so I want to know from anyone on the panel, what role do local organizations, government agencies, and nonprofits play in the healing process?
I think in the initial response, it's pivotal. Upon the event happening and within those first 12 hours, it's who do you lean into for the immediate help? It's local government, it's boots on the ground, it's hospital, medical workers, EMS, and so until the sun comes up, so to speak, in our case, there's always a program and there's a process, and that's what Chief Douglas and Steve were real good at doing. But in the initial phases, it's clear the roads, search and rescue, utility restoration. We're in the first 12 to 18 hours trying to make sure that the agencies that typically come in through these and address issues like food insecurity, having no shelter, having no fuel, all of those things, that's all on your local government, whether it's the city or county, for the first initial response. And so we're looking at, okay, we've got to get the hospitals up and going, we've got to get some gas stations up and going, we've got to get some convenience stores, if nothing else, just so people have a place to get food. Even if that's us and going and buying 47 cases of Twinkies, we've got to have something. And so there's a lot of weight on the shoulders of your local elected officials, your administrators, your commissioners, your sheriffs, your police, and we're prepared for it, but having those relationships until the Red Crosses get here, until the Samaritan's Purse gets here, until Team Rubicon gets here, all of these people that deal with this on a major level get here, and there's somebody that can facilitate that. It's a lot, and we felt that pressure, but I believe we delivered. But the agencies, the partnerships were key in everything that we did. We could not have done it by ourselves.
Steve, would you add anything to that?
We couldn't have done it without our local groups as well. Our local churches, the Baptists, the Methodists, our Light of Hope, group. We have so many outreach programs here within our community. We needed them every bit as much because they were here being able to help. You know, they may not be used to doing it on such a large scale, but they got the balls rolling, and that's what we needed, and they provided and they stepped up. And again, we wouldn't have made it through without them setting the stage for these other groups coming into town. You know,
And they had the
they're-
logistics and they had the initial, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right.
Absolutely.
Our local folks were outstanding.
And I think the contacts and the networks to really kind of be the fingers out, because that's the unique geographic difference in Claremore, right? You've got your central town, but even 10, 15 minutes away, you have other impacts. And so making sure too, it's not only our nonprofits, but our private sector coming in too. I know we had RCB and Bank First and integrated services and, you know, our manufacturers providing lunch and meals for 123 linemen that are working 24/7, or going door to door alongside to say, hey, you know, we're this manufacturer, I've got some extra employees today, take them and go to door serve meals. And so I think it truly takes that entire ecosystem to thrive.
Excellent. How can community leaders and policymakers better support long-term recovery? So I'm sure there's some things you've learned along the way. So how can you all think through some recovery efforts that might need to be in place if something happens like this again?
I know from our perspective, from the private sector, even in our own team, we have 7 children under 5 in our team of 4. Had this happened during the school year, during the day, how would the response have been different? What would the traffic have looked like? And so that's something we've had a lot of internal conversation, not with just our ability to serve, but what does that look like and how do we need to better communicate and align all of those resources as well?
Yeah, I think doing what we'll call a post-mortem study after this, it's imperative that you look at an event like this and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's what we created on the fly. I mean, there's long-term recovery, which we'll be in for a while, from a tangible assets, fixed asset stage. There's long-term recovery from a behavioral health, mental health phase. And then there's how do we make sure that, God forbid this happen again, we do it better and more efficiently. And so there's a lot of components to that on that recovery side. And I know that our team, we're in for a couple of years of just fiscal recovery and several weeks or months of debris removal and utility reconstruction. But for me, those are things that we have to do and are frankly going to be easier than how do we heal some hearts and minds. And those are the things. We're going to have people whose houses were destroyed and they were tenants, and that landlord's not going to rebuild that home. Mm-hmm. We're going to have people that were homeowners and they didn't have insurance because they've owned their home and land for 50 years, and they're going to get $40,000 from FEMA, which does nothing, and so they're going to abandon those lots. There are people out there starting over, elderly people starting over, young people with a socioeconomic income of less than the poverty level starting over. So that's where we really need to be thinking big term, big picture as a group, because there are lanes that we have to stay in as government, and there's lanes that other people have to stay in. And so it's definitely opened up our eyes to a lot of things for the future.
So how, would you advise, particularly for neighbors and community members who may not have been hit as hard, they still have their homes, but there are so many people who still have need. What do they do? And, I did see in Tulsa a lot of news stories say, I know you want to go and drive around and see the damage and help pick up limbs and help, stop, don't do it. I know people want to. So how do you advise people who actually may have capacity to be in the right places at the right time? What do they do?
Pick up their phone.
And call.
Call those of us that are involved.
That's right.
We can direct them the directions that they need to go. If they're, and we'll just say if they're shooting from the hip, they're probably not going to be in the right spot. Claremore had an officer hit, was ran over by a trailer of a person that came to assist. Wow. They didn't call ahead of time. They just showed up. They were doing the best they could. They were being turned around because at that point we were not in a position where we could allow other people in due to all the power lines and everything down, all the debris. The debris was so catastrophic that, somebody might not realize that that limb could be falling any time, and we can't let you walk under that because they call them widowmakers for a reason. But this person got upset and went flying out of there and ran over one of our local officers, and that's just simply not acceptable. So people, when these tragedies are happening, they need to make the phone calls to at least the local dispatch center, because that local dispatch center can then direct them to the people at the EOCs and be able to provide that information as needed.
And I think even on a more human and deep, and Steve's absolutely right, but what I found in driving around, in the evenings or at night, people out there is, people just, it's like anything, they want to be informed, and frankly, they want to feel like they're being heard. I can't tell you how many people I would stop just driving down the road and get out and just talk to them and hug them and pray with them, and they just wanted to know that somebody that had the potential to help possibly was actually doing something. And we assured them that, our 250 full-time employees and the county's employees and all of our volunteers were absolutely working to get them restored the best we could. But people just want to know somebody cares. And that's the biggest thing. That's why our churches and our philanthropic groups were so pivotal during this.
So I'm going to get personal with you, John, but I can't because you're my friend.
That's right.
I've known you forever.
Yep.
You said something to me on Friday in the planning call that made all of this humanized, because we all have feelings, and we all have hearts, and we all have minds. And the toll that this took on you. Would you mind sharing? And I'm not trying to get you emotional.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you did. Listen, I learned a long time ago, there's certain things that you've got to talk about. And so, 3 or 4 days in, I don't know that any of us had slept. I'm looking at Stan and Steve. I think 3 days after I went home and took a shower and got out of the same wet clothes and boots I'd been wearing and slept for about 30 minutes before I went back in. But in the time that I was driving around, and when it really, your adrenaline's going, we have a purpose, we have a mission, and we have to be decisive, and we go. And probably day 3 or 4, just one evening, 6, 7 o'clock, and visiting with folks, and then just headed to the house to get a clean up, turn around and come back in. And it just hit me. I got home and Chelsea was like, "Are you okay?" And I just kind of fell into her, and I was like, people have lost everything. And they're leaning into us, not me, but us as public servants. I come home to my house in my nice subdivision, still didn't have any power. It doesn't do any good to live next door to the city manager, by the way. Our power does not come on any faster. And I just said, there is so much loss out there. And I said, while it was weighing on me, and there was a combination of being tired and exhausted, but it was also, there were some tears but they're so motivated, tolerant, and hopeful. They had hope because they would tell me the stories of their neighbors. One of our police officers stopped by, or a firefighter was on his way home after shift and he saw somebody doing something, he got out and helped him move something, or just a random stranger. And so, but it takes an emotional toll on us as individuals too, as those that are tasked with it. I know in my conversations with my team what they were going through. I know when they're working 18 hours straight for the next group to come in and then saying, we don't want to go home because we're not done taking care of our community. It takes a toll on it. It makes you proud, but it also makes you realize we also need to take that step sometime and have that conversation. And so we want to make sure those resources are available for not just the community, but our team members as well.
Thank you for sharing that. What are some, or how can we ensure that all community members, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, especially the vulnerable populations, have access to the necessary resources during the recovery process? Matt, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so this is a really good point. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but you have a wide range of individuals that have been impacted, and there's going to be a subset of those that don't have the resources available to crawl back out of this situation. And so it's very important for us to help in locating these resources. There's a lot of individuals that are very focused on I mean, just as a for instance, if you're someone who has a job and has a car and there's a current roof over your head and you're hungry, you get in your car, you drive to Walmart, you purchase something, you drive it back, you cook it for your family, right? There are individuals that were impacted by this that don't have a car, that are not currently working, or their income is just enough to get by. And then, these individuals, they're focused on just where they're going to get their next meal and not rebuilding and getting to the next aspect of this recovery and repair process. And so, I just think it's very important that we point them in the right direction of resources that we have available here, that there are available in the Tulsa area as well, and just be mindful of these individuals and be good neighbors to them, and help to point them in the right direction of agencies that can help.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question that I didn't give you beforehand, but hopefully you won't be mad. But when you're thinking about preparing for the future, and I want everyone to answer this one, what lessons can we learn from a disaster like this to better prepare? Or what lesson have you learned through this situation? Diana, can we start with you?
We can. I think humility was one of those, and being humble and present with yourself, with others, and pay attention when you see the signs. And, there were neighborhoods that I went into where neighbors were against neighbors because more of their property ended up in the other neighbor's property. So there were disputes. And I did pay attention to their behaviors to see where I needed to lean or where they needed to lean. It's just mostly being present and acknowledging.
Thank you. Steve, what about you?
Being available and having that ear. Sometimes people just need to talk. And we are so caught up, I was answering a text, we're so caught up in all of the technology stuff that's going on. But we need, just because you're listening doesn't mean you're listening. You need to give that person your full undivided attention. Let them know you do truly care and be there for them. Open up, let them know of your struggles. If you're having some struggles with things, and you can create a very healthy bond and help people through situations as a result of doing things like that. One of the things that in the EOC, I was constantly asking everybody, have you gotten sleep? What have you been doing? Because we have to maintain as well. And I think I can speak for John and Steve and everybody that, I didn't go to bed. This happened Saturday night. I didn't go to bed till Monday evening. And my house was directly in the path. I drove through the tornado trying to get to the EOC. And then after I started seeing the devastation of the way it blew me around in the truck, I immediately turned around and tried to get to my home because my wife and daughter and grandson was at home. I couldn't even get home because of everything. So I made the phone call, knew they were okay. All right, make sure the rest of the family, because I kind of live in a little compound, make sure everybody else is okay. If you need something, call me. Otherwise, I'm going, But then I knew my family was taken care of, and then my focus was on all of our first responders, Is everybody eating? Are we getting food? Are we drinking water? Do we have snacks? Is everybody getting rest? Because if that is not being provided as well, we're not able to function to help the people that need the help.
That is so important. We forget about them, and we shouldn't, but somebody has to be thinking about those folks that are doing all the work to save and restore and to heal. So thanks for raising that. Meggie, what about you? What have you learned, or what could we learn from this?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on those, I had originally written "Don't pour from an empty cup," and so
That's
we
so
found that a
good.
lot. But in addition to that, I think understanding the human elements that happen, whether you're a person serving and those serving alongside of you have been awake for 3 days and you're emotional and tired and all the other things, but also practicing that flexibility. We originally took an approach, we got it together, there were 4 of us, we thought it was a great idea, and then all of a sudden we started getting some pretty aggressive feedback that, hey, this isn't helping, you need to do this instead. And so practicing that grace and humility, whether you're someone that's been impacted or someone that's serving, I think is critical. We had similar to John and everybody else, you're going 6,000 different ways, City Hall doors open, because you never know who's coming in at that point. And there was an elderly gentleman that had came in and was barely able to even walk. He had been impacted by the debris, and his wife is still hospitalized. And I just got to get this done. And so did I have the time to sit down with him and walk that? Not really. And in that moment, you're like, oh, man, there's nobody else around because we're all running. So I sat down with him and we spent 30 minutes, and he just wanted to talk and be heard. But by the end of that, and we spent the entire next day going door to door to door to hundreds of businesses. Wow. You sit down and it's like, I'm exhausted. Like it's a lot. And so I think being humble, practicing humility, understanding that those serving you are your neighbors, they're family members of those impacted, and being mindful of that is critical, but then also not being afraid to be vulnerable. And I think that's something I took away from our team, for us to just sit down and go, yeah, I'm not okay. This was a long day, and that was really hard. And then making sure in that vulnerability that you're not afraid to seek out those that can help you walk through those situations. Because even if your home wasn't hit, if you're going to 100 businesses back to back to back to back, you're serving meals, you're hearing all of that, that has an impact on you. And so making sure you're seeking that support.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I mean, reiterate and echo a lot of what was said. I always approach things and, how can we be better prepared and what did we learn? It's more from a tactical or strategic, this part of town was affected in this way. So it's hard for me to sometimes flip the switch. I feel like we've done a really good job in our organization over the last several years of making sure that our first responders and our personnel have access to multiple mental health resources. So they're out there. Whether we utilize them, and then also remembering, to Meggie's point too, on that vulnerability, we all need it. Mm-hmm. We all need some sort of outlet. Grace is something that I spent a lot of time practicing, especially, day 6 and 7 when people didn't understand why everything wasn't fixed yet. Well, it's been 70 days, folks, and everything's still not fixed, and it's not going to be fixed for several months. It's repaired, much like most of the people that were affected by this. They've got some temporary fixes or repairs, and they've got shelter right now, and they've got food, but they're not fixed. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how long it's going to be till they get fixed. So remembering those things, how they affect not just the community, but how they affect our team members and how they affect our elected officials and just everybody in this room. So, but we will get better from this. Mm-hmm. We're not doing our job if we don't take this experience and say what worked, what didn't work, and how do we better prepare our communities for, God forbid, the next time this happens.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah, so I'll just say, I think I've probably picked something up just from hearing the rest of everybody else share. We serve 13 counties, northeast, north central Oklahoma, dealing with storm relief and being available to the community and those who have been impacted by natural disasters is something that that we're used to, and it's something that we feel that we have protocol in place to work through and be able to handle. And what I'm kind of hearing as we go down the line here, we have focused a lot of energy on the community, on our clients, on those who are underserved. But I think I think, you guys have taken on a huge burden here that, whenever we're reaching out to you and saying, hey, what can we do for the community? I think, we can change that question to what can we do for the community? What can we do for you? And so that's something that I definitely think we can take away and would make us stronger next time.
Well, I'm going to ask that question. What can we do? If people are still interested in helping now, either you all who are doing the public service or people who are still in need, what could we be doing?
Well, I'll say from our standpoint, and I apologize, I normally try to, but I'm still literally working on the logistics of a food truck that's showing up at a county building, and we're trying to unload for community partners to come
Wow.
get food to disperse out into the community. So there are still people out there right now, there are individual homeowners that need help getting just debris out of their backyards up to the right of way for us to pick up. There are people out there that have still not had a lot of communication with people. They haven't gone to church since this, or maybe their car was destroyed. But again, it's always that availability and that presence. But honestly, the physical things that help us right now there's a lot of people out there, and there's organizations here locally still working and looking for volunteers to help just get stuff out of the way and up to the road so we can come pick it up and get it out of the way. And I know that seems like a little thing, but it's a huge thing if you're that person that has no means and no way to get that giant tree stump out of your yard, out of the backyard, the shed that blew over that insurance won't cover. Those daily reminders of what happened 70 days ago have an effect on you. And so if you see or hear of opportunities on our social media channels or any of our wonderful, amazing philanthropic organizations, go put on some work boots and grab a pair of gloves, because that's really the biggest help that our folks need right now.
Excellent.
I was
Steve?
out working the other night after dark, and I still saw a home. It was a rental unit, but still saw a home that was missing part of the roof. And I was driving by, and I'm like, just kind of taken back. I put it in reverse and backed up and looked, and I could see the lights in their house through the, they were literally still missing about 1/8 of the roof on their house. And, it was blue, because they had a blue tarp on it, but there was absolutely nothing under it.
Wow.
There's still that need out there. I would suggest they get with our local volunteer groups, our churches. Our churches are going to know certain people within their churches and congregations, and be able to get that word out as well, and get out there and help those folks. But don't be scared. Like John said, put your boots on, put your gloves on, and contact some of these folks and get after it.
Good. Meggie?
The other inquiry that we're receiving too that we haven't really talked about is making sure you're using a reliable company and a reliable contractor. Unfortunately, in these situations, scams happen and people are taken advantage of, and we've had that in our community. And so Visit Claremore Chamber of Commerce has a business directory. I know our team has been helping businesses find temporary locations while they're working through theirs as well. And so if that's a resource or you don't know where to turn, there are entities in this community that can help you understand who's local, who's reliable, and who maybe didn't just pop up in business 70 days ago.
Wow. That's such good advice.
Don't
They show up with an
volunteer
out-of-state
with a
tag. Just
The next session will be on lessons learned from what not to do. But then this is my last question before I turn it over to Larry Smith. And maybe it's for John, maybe it's, whoever, but, I think, what advice would you give to other communities that may face the same sort of tragedy in the future? And what you just said kind of triggered that thought. Everybody may not be legit, but just kind of what would you say to other communities who may have to experience this?
One, have a plan and have good people,
There you
first
go.
and foremost, which we did. The city of Claremore and Rogers County had good people. Dan DeLozier and I, before we walked into that first meeting, I don't even remember what morning, Steve, we knew there were 30 or 40 people in there. We were going to kind of be the points of this is how we move forward. Everybody went in. Dan and I stopped, my hand on his shoulder, and I said, again, there's no egos, whatever we've got to do. And Dan and I sat there and said a prayer with each other and walked inside. And from that point on, we were decisive. We were in lockstep with every decision that we made, and everything we did was about taking care of the community. Having good people on your team in every single role is pivotal. Having good leadership and people that can and are willing to make decisions is pivotal. And let me just tell you all something right now. You don't have a finer county commissioner for that district than Dan Delosier.
Wow.
Dan and I became dear friends. We were friends before that, but Dan, you get to the point where you don't talk to him 3 or 4 times a day. I call him every once in a while just because I miss him. And I'll tell you right now, the team inside the city limits, there's a few people on our team, but every single person in our organization for 2 weeks did nothing but storm recovery. It didn't matter if you were at the library, the finance department, human resources, the utility department, public works, police, you pick it. This is all everybody focused on, was how do we get back up and going? And those partnerships, to answer your question specifically, if your community doesn't have a strong relationship with your county commissioners, if it doesn't have a strong relationship with the state of Oklahoma, and in our world, thank God, if you don't have a strong relationship with a tribal nation, you need to work on those. Because every single thing we needed or asked for, they said yes to. All of those entities. And we were very, very fortunate. So I'm going to tell you, relationships and partnerships when you're trying to run a local government or county government are pivotal. And so my first and foremost advice is, once you have your plan in place, and make sure you have the right people, make sure you have the relationships. We could not have done what we did in those first 2 weeks without the city of Tulsa, the city of Owasso, Rogers counties, and Tulsa, Mays County sent assets, Cherokee Nation, the state of Oklahoma. It's pivotal that communities have partnerships and strong relationships with their neighbors and with other areas of government. And I also want you all to know that every federal delegate from the state of Oklahoma that I've been privileged to have relationships with over the years reached out to me in the first 24 to 48 hours. Our congressmen, our senators, they were paying attention. The lieutenant governor was a huge, I talked to Matt daily, we've been friends for years, state representatives. So just know that establishing those partnerships in whatever role you're in right now, I've been doing it for 20 plus years,
sure
and I'm glad I did, because there's not one of them that I couldn't pick up the phone and ask for something.
Wow. Well, I think a big round of applause, or maybe even a standing ovation, is in order for this amazing panel of public servants. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for who you are. And thank you for keeping this community a resilient one. I'll now turn it over to Larry Smith, the CEO for Grand Mental Health. Thank you for being kind to me today.
Jessica does a great job. Thank you. And I appreciate you, Jessica, for your work. You know, I live in Rogers County. I happen to have a Claremore address, but I happen to live over on Keaton Hill. And I think that's kind of where it started, right? Because my house got it, but not near as bad as y'all did in Claremore itself or to the east of us. So devastating to everyone. You know, I want to talk a little bit about our iPads. Every first responder in this county has an iPad in their car that all they have to do is touch a button, and they can contact a therapist, a live therapist 24/7 in our crisis centers. And we need to be using those. We need to make sure that we are, if we see somebody that appears to be depressed or appears to be high anxiety and they need to talk to somebody, please take your iPad, push the button, and just hand it to them and let them talk to a therapist or a mental health professional about what's going on with them. And let us do an assessment and let us try to help them determine where they're at in their recovery. I think that's important, and I appreciate the first responders using those tools. You know, our first responsibility, or we felt like it was, is to the community, of course. But those individuals that have a severe mental illness, those individuals that are indigent, some people lost their home and they have a friend to go to or they have somewhere else to go. Many of our clients that are indigent are this close to homelessness. This tornado sent them over the edge. They are now homeless. They are now without a home, and they are now struggling, and we are responding to those individuals as quickly as we possibly can. You know, first responders treated the lacerations, they treated the broken bones, and our job is to treat the brain. The brain controls it all. And I feel like sometimes that's very important, that people get over the stigma that I don't have any mental health issues, I don't have depression, I don't have anxiety, and just open up and recognize that we're willing to do an assessment on the children, on the family, or on you as an individual to help you determine exactly where you are if you don't know exactly. And we're willing to do that and help you through that process. The children, we as adults, I'm 70 years old, I don't mind. I look 80, but I'm 70. And I have a lot of life experiences to get me through some stuff. Our children don't have that. They're seeing this and thinking, oh my God, is this going to happen 10, 20, 100 times in my life? Is this and so children are probably dealing with this a little bit differently. So if, again, we're in the schools, we're doing everything that we can to treat the community and the children, but if you know a child that maybe have a little bit different behavior since most of us will have, but I mean, something that you may want us to look at or do an assessment on, please call us. Just give us a call and we'll be more than happy. There's no harm in having an assessment done. It doesn't mean you're going to get treatment. It just means that we're going to see kind of where you're at from a mental health perspective. Treating PTSD. You know, after this thing, there was a big cloud came over my house, and I kind of got nervous. I realized it was a little bit more reactive than I normally would do, right? Because it was a dark cloud. And thinking, man, is this thing going to drop down a tornado on us, right? So PTSD and some of those anxieties and some of those feelings, some of the stuff that you're going through, that emotional part is very traumatizing. And we're here to help with that when we can and how we can. But you have to reach out, and we're also reaching out, by the way. You don't always have to reach out to us. We're in the community. We're trying to do a better job at making sure that access to children, families, and individuals have access to mental health services in Rogers County. We've done a lot of different things to make that happen. So, long-term and short-term financial needs of people, especially those people that are already at the very indigent or just barely making it. Their long-term and short-term financial needs going to be hard to meet them. And for those that that are our clients and we're trying to help them with their rent and make sure that they have a place to stay. We have our crisis centers open in case anybody has a crisis that they really, because, nobody likes to talk about suicide. Nobody likes to hear that word. Nobody likes to think about it. But I'm asking first responders to really start looking for that. Use that iPad. If you see somebody that's pretty depressed, let's don't take a chance of them deciding that life is hopeless and they're not going to get any help. Let's make sure that we do something and get services to those individuals, and including children. So, first of all, I want to thank y'all. I want to thank the first responders. There's a second button on every iPad, though, in a first responder's vehicle, and it's for them to use. It's a button they can touch their bosses, chief of police, the sheriff. Nobody will ever know they touched that button. And all they got to do is touch that button, and we'll get them the help they need without going through the system. And of course, we're going to also talk to them about maybe you want to get with your supervisor and talk about some of these things. But the bottom line is they don't have to. And we're here for those first responders. They saved our lives. They saved a lot of people's lives. They're on the street. These guys were working 24/7. 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it all catches up with you. And that button is on that iPad for that reason. At 2 o'clock in the morning, if it all comes down and starts crashing around you, that's when you push it. So, because it's open, it's answered 24/7. This homeless population that we're dealing with, It's a crisis. People that are homeless are in crisis. They may not even know they're in crisis, but I promise you they're in crisis. And we've added several people to that crisis list because of this storm. So let's just recognize those things. Panel, I learned some things today. Appreciate y'all and your intelligence and your caring for this community and how hard you actually worked. I mean, most people don't realize that 72 hours on your feet doing 24/7 under that kind of pressure takes its toll. So please, if you need something from us when it comes to your mental health, please don't hesitate to ask. And for the community out there as a whole, we ask you to lean on us. We're here. Thank you. Is there any questions from the audience? Since our moderator is gone. Anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am. Huh?
I gathered some funds from friends when the event happened, and probably like a lot of people, there wasn't really any need. Where can I send those funds now that are most helpful?
So we've been very fortunate that we wanted to make sure there was a legitimate 501c3. So Destiny Life Church set up a community disaster fund that many people have donated, multiple churches, individuals. Shelley, I'll get you their information. They have a process that you make application for assistance and they vet it and they'll pay vendors directly or get you the resources directly to the need.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Oh, she's back, we gotta stop talking about her. No, Jessica.
There's our moderator. I was asking if anybody had any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Jessica. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about role in the population. I'm one with a family who, mom is a citizen, dad is not. They're homeowners, their children go to school here. They've had a lot of reluctance in asking for help, and they haven't asked for any help whatsoever. They had damages, their vehicle was totally destroyed by trees falling on it. He says he couldn't get any insurance on his pickup. So, can we refer those people to FEMA? I mean, would I go with it? I think there's such a reluctance about repercussions, finding out, they have serious repercussions.
We are hearing a lot of that. We are hearing a lot of it. They absolutely need to go up to the health department, to the annex, and register and apply for help, specifically and especially if they don't have insurance. His citizenship status doesn't have any bearing on it. Hers, they'll be fine. They have to go up there. When we did our closeout for individual assistance for the people that were canvassing across the state, as you all know, we were declared with 8 other counties. They had only registered. They had touched 1,900 homes throughout the 8 counties, not just here. They'd only registered about 147 at the time of our first IA meeting, and 74 of them were for Claremore or Rogers County, which is because of what you're talking about, Lou, is, well, either I have insurance, they can't help me, or I don't want the government knowing what I've got. Well, they probably already do, first and foremost. But if you're eligible, everybody needs to go up and register. You have until August the 14th. After that, if you are not at least registered, it does not matter if they have sent you something that you perceive to be a denial. It's most likely not a denial. It's something that's requesting additional information, but the way it's worded looks like a denial. You appeal, you go up there, but you have to register by August 14th. If you're not registered in their system by August 14th for this event, you're out. So absolutely take them up there. Nothing's going to happen to them.
Thank you. If you have any more questions or you need support, please feel free to visit with the panelists following the discussion today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to Grand Mental Health, to Rogers State. We also wanted to recognize a beautiful florist. The arrangements that you see on the table today are provided by Bloom Studio, and we're so happy to have them. And they will be gifts distributed by the Grand staff following the event to those who might need some cheering up. So without further ado, you are dismissed. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again for your time.